So, Wonka is the prequel to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the old Roald Dahl adaptation starring Gene Wilder, who, of course, immortalized the role of Willy Wonka as this kooky chocolatier who's giving away his factory to one of 6 special children who possess golden tickets found in his chocolate bars. Wonka is set quite a few years before and follows Timothy Chalamet as the titular Willy Wonka, a young man who's just arrived from port, having sought his fortune in chocolate recipes and who's discovered these incredible ways to make people laugh and smile and feel all these emotions through the magic of chocolate and charity. He arrives to find that he is basically completely destitute and has nowhere to stay but Mrs. Scrubbits, which is a kind of laundromat hotel where he meets a couple of fine friends and hopes to set out to create a chocolate shop that's going to be the biggest one in the whole world, right? The most magical place. But it turns out this small town is run by 3 evil chocolatiers, right? And nefarious individuals who would much rather see Wonka ruined than celebrate the special abilities of his chocolate that is created with love and ingredients far and wide. Lots of music, lots of magic, and Timothy Chalamet, who of course is not known to be a song and dance man by I think national audiences, but apparently has a pretty big theater background, is singing and dancing through the whole feature. It is a Paul King film. Director Paddington 1 and 2, obviously very beloved. I gotta know, Andy, what did you think of Wonka?
So overall, I liked it. I think it's a big triumph for kind of younger audiences, for family films. It's definitely the kind of thing to see over the holidays. Like I said, safe, fun for the whole family. It gets it's a little long, and I think it gets a little slow. Kind of gets bogged down in exposition. Funny enough for a kids film, but it has the things it does right. It does so well, like the sets, the song and dance, the spectacle of it all, the songs, the music. And it's perfect thing to take the kids to see. And that's one of the things we were discussing. Like I am not the target audience for this, and I think it's a total win for the target audience that's interested in it.
Wonka's a uniquely humble feature, I think, because yeah, it's got a big budget, $150 million, but I think it comes from a place of authenticity. Nobody was asking for a Willy Wonka prequel, right? Like, and everybody remembers the Johnny Depp Tim Burton one that I think if you were born after like 2002, you probably were into because that was kind of the one you were coming up with. But anybody a little older than that is probably not so much into that one. Everybody thinks of the Wilder performance, so it's weird that Paul King is a part of this script and wants to direct this feature about Willy Wonka, right? Like who really cares? Who's going digging in the Willy Wonka well? But apparently Paul King is, and he wanted to put this feature together. I don't know how he got Timothy Chalamet on board, but Chalamet seems to be really authentic as this outgoing, kooky weirdo Willy Wonka, right? This traveler who's zany, but also very sincere, like, and struggles with his own set of problems. Like, I think he manages to take the best parts of Wilder's performance and tone them down and wheel them back to a younger, more endearing version of who ends up being a cynic in the later film, or at least acting like it. Like, I think he does a good job. And even if his singing's a little auto-tuned, you know, like he's belting the notes. He's putting the time in. And I think that helps carry him through as Wonka. I think that's why people are mostly charmed by him.
Yeah, Chalamet has mostly done pretty serious roles. Like he broke out with "Call Me by Your Name" and did a lot of kind of the Oscar independent films, and then is in more big stuff like Dune, and that's how we kind of know him as a very serious actor. But he's apparently much more like a theater kid. Like he's all about like the song and dance production, which we really haven't been able to see on screen up until this time, and he does a great job. He doesn't overdo it. He's not trying to I thought of this like, comparing it to something like the Joker. He's not trying to redefine the character or the performance or give you know, like a Jack Sparrow kind of flair to him. He's just, a young chocolatier with, magical dreams of creating chocolate. And it's the perfect medium. Like because it would be a mistake to, I think, to try to overdo it, and he does it. And it fits in with the rest of what is a really great cast. We have Olivia Colman as Mrs. Scrubbit, being extra British. Keegan Michael Key is the chief of police, who's got a lot of good gags. He slowly gets bigger over the course of the movie because he just can't stop eating chocolate. Um, and then you have these three, like the chocolate cartel that they call them, which are these three businessmen, and they're all played by really interesting character actors, really overdoing it, that extra, like, dastardly mustache twirl kind of villain that they are. It's the cast is outstanding. I think that's one of the things that, like, it's going to really work with younger audiences.
Yeah, in the loosest way, I had this like inkling of Mad Max Fury Road when I was watching this because you've got your wayward traveler of myth, right, who wanders in from out of town, and you've got your like three evil lords who run everything. And in Mad Max, it's like what the Bullet Farmer and the Gas Man, and this it's Slugworth and Prodnose and Fickelgruber. And I was like, oh, this is great, dude. Like totally work. Obviously, it's nothing like Mad Max, but I should say, yeah, the cast is particularly charming. Yeah, you've got Chalamet, Keegan Michael Key, who's done a ton of musical work over on Schmigadoon on Apple TV Plus. I think that's that show. Olivia Colman with the extra weird teeth, and Tom Davis is Bleacher, this like giant oversized guy. Calla Lane is Noodle, who's kind of Wonka's young friend who he meets at this I'm loose to say hotel he's staying at, but this kind of laundromat that he's working at, and along with a handful of other charming characters. Everybody's fun. As far as I should say the music goes, I want to talk about that a second. The music is fine. I think the movie overuses Pure Imagination maybe one or two too many times. It opens on its production slates with it. Its credits are Pure Imagination. It's got a few tones of it throughout the movie that kind of drift in when people are having emotional moments. And I'm glad that like I said, it's like the old one from the 80s. I think that's a good thing. But like it maybe just goes one too many times. Other than that, you do get your Oompa Loompa track, and then otherwise all new music, none of which is particularly memorable. I guess a couple of those tracks are a little toe tapping when you're watching it, but like I could not hum you a single track.
Sing the Wonka theme.
Song. Yeah, sing the Wonka theme. I can't do it. It's fun music. It looks great visually. Paul King really puts in the extra effort on these musical numbers, especially for the more imaginative work. But like as far as the actual music goes, it is fine. It's good. It's not great. It's just fine. Good music.
Yeah, and that's how I felt. Like the songs aren't super memorable. You don't have a big number, and yeah, you are waiting the whole movie for Nation. There was another movie he did this recently where they would just kind of play like half the theme, and until like the very end. Basically, it's an annoying thing because you're like, just do it, just sing the song so we can move on with our lives. I kind of wanted to get into our plot, which is a little complicated. Willy Wonka ends up kind of in debtor's prison very early on, and he's been condemned to a life of cleaning sheets along with five other unfortunate souls, and they have to devise a scheme to both wash sheets and also secretly sell chocolate and overthrow the chocolate cartel. There's a lot of fun and games, and like I said, over the top numbers and characters. It gets a little wordy. I felt like the first act was kind of long. Like this is a full 2 hours. Act one's kind of long. There's a whole lot of talking. There's also a whole lot of dead parents in this, which it's a very Disney thing to do, but a whole lot of people missing their parents in this movie, yearning for them. But that's some strangely standard for children's movies.
Mm-hmm.
The plot gets a little overcomplicated, and we don't really get much. It's not an origin story of like it's not like how he became Willy Wonka. It's just kind of a young version of him.
Yeah, and I was really charmed by the sprinkling of like themes and elements from the original here without being too direct. Because the obvious stuff is like Hugh Grant as Oompa Loompa, which didn't work for me. I'm sure for the kids it's 100% fine, but there's just some weird thing about the shrunken face on the CGI body that just never pulls me. It's like my eyes glaze over watching it. Like it just doesn't. I suddenly I'm sitting in a movie theater and I'm out of the movie. It's fine.
Uncanny
I'm old.
Valley.
That's right. Movie's not made for a 32-year-old. It's fine. Anyway, like the Wonka hat, the cane, that stuff you expect. The stuff that's really charming that I didn't expect is things like our setting, this like European town that isn't really inspired by any one place. It looks like France, but then the people have English accents, but then the police are dressed like they're in Italy, and that really fits with that old movie because that old movie is like when they go up in the great glass elevator, you can tell it's a European town, but everybody speaks American English, which is really weird, and it's like this odd setting. In the factory, you get these kooky machines of like giant whirligigs and Rube Goldberg type devices with big shoes on sticks and all kinds of stuff. And that happens again in our film when we're working at the laundromat, and Wonka needs a way to get laundry moved faster. Well, it creates this machine, you know. Our charming chocolates, right? Our everlasting gobstoppers in the old one look like these weird, kooky, multicolored things you'd eat. And every piece of candy in this movie looks the same way. It looks like this really charming, colorful something that you'd see at a confectionery and think, oh my God, that's got to be the best thing ever. I like the way this movie does not just like Force Awakens its way through the plot. It does not just rewrite the first movie. It gives you a fresh spin, fresh plot, but it just peppers those things in there. Like we'll have a change of scene, and suddenly you see something that looks like it fell right out of the first one. Even, I mean, we were talking about this the other day. Even Keegan-Michael Key, like slowly swelling over the course of the film as he continues to eat the chocolate of our three nefarious chocolatiers and do what they say. That is a lot like Violet Beauregard turned into a blueberry. Like the movie's full of them. Full of these things. And like I think that stuff's really clever, especially for the older people in the audience like myself who have seen the old one, right? Like it manages to feel fresh while lifting the most charming parts of that old movie. I think it's great. I think it's part of the reason it's getting such good reviews.
Yeah, I think part of what also works is that there are a whole lot of practical sets and effects and um, sequences that really highlight, that they're not shooting on, Marvel Screen 7 with just 110 uh, screen. What's the video game background thing called that they do?
Oh God, what buying assets? Yeah, from the Unreal Engine
Well, no, it's
store.
when
And
they instead of using green screen, they have like LED panels in the back. That's
oh, the
that's what they're
volume.
not.
Yeah, they're not just shooting in the
At.
volume, right? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. So it's a lot of real sets, and of course, I mean, there's a lot of magical stuff. So there are digital effects, but they're used smartly. They're not overdone. A lot of like the costumes are practical. A lot of the sets, a lot of the numbers. It's just good old kind of fashion stage work combined. So I think it's a good mix of those things, and it's gonna give it life. It's not gonna get get old after a year or two.
Yeah, like I think that comes through in Paul King. Like that's something that really stands the test of time about those Paddington features. Like a lot of it, you know, exteriors and stuff will be shot on green screen, sure, but like so much of it feels tangible because he manages to put us in a world of texture and color and light like that. We want to spend time with these characters who are uniquely magical. And much like Paddington coming in from Peru, like Wonka kind of drifting in to seek his fortune and kind of discover the world through the kindness of strangers, right? And to be kind to others, like ultimately is a surprisingly endearing message that I think is heartwarming for those of us who are maybe a little cynical on this feature. Like I said, I went in thinking like, okay, yeah, Wonka's getting good reviews, sure. But I tell you, by the end of that first act, I was pretty locked in. I was pretty there for it. It's a little long at 2 hours, I think, but like Andy pointed out just the other day, great babysitter, right? You got kids, you need to throw something on. But you could do far worse than Wonka. I would wager to say this might be one of the best kids movies of the year, if anything, because a parent could watch it and not be bored to tears. You know what I mean? There's some decent stuff in there, especially if you're familiar with that old one, I think. But I may be running out of things to say about it. Andy, any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
Well, I was just gonna say because I recently watched a little bit of Trolls World Tour, and that's definitely tough to watch as an adult, even with like the millennial music. But Wonka is much more charming and endearing, and I think much more palatable for parents and kids alike, for sure.
That's right. Andy, would you recommend Wonka?
I would. It's a great family and children's feature. Um, Great cast with Timothy Chalamet in the title role. Fun sets, good. The music's good enough. It's a little long, and the plot is a little convoluted, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a great kind of holiday movie.
I'm in the same boat. I think Wonka's solid. Good date movie, good holiday movie, good movie to take the fam to. It will probably be the film most families are checking out on Christmas, right? Christmas Day is the busiest day at movie theaters in the United States. This will probably be the thing people are walking into. And you could do far worse. It's not bad. Like, I think it's good. I don't think it's great. I do find myself a little surprised by critics who have been like 5 full stars. Like, I like it a lot, but I don't think it's, it's not gonna win Oscars. That's what I think. It won't win.
It's fine.
What? Yeah, it's
It's
good.
fine.
It's good.
And fine
It's
is
good.
not a bad word.
It's a good movie. That's right. Listen, God, don't ever say something is not bad on YouTube. My God, will you get roasted? We should know. It's good. Wonka is good. That's the review. Wonka's good. All right, we've done it. We've reviewed Wonka. Andy, we got to talk about something much more nefarious. This is something we've covered on the show before, but it's a bit of a bombshell this week because we finally have some real news about it. We have some definitive answers, I think, a judgment. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the death of cinema.